Good morning. We have a packed agenda today, and so we're going to get started. We're a few minutes late, but I know traffic is bad and we weren't anticipating and stuff. So I'm Barb. I'm the one that you've been hearing from for the past 3 weeks about. And welcome to Camp Make It. We are thrilled that you're here. I heard from bunches of you this weekend about a lot of different things. Everything from I'm so excited to I'm so nervous and everything in between. So we're glad you're here. This is the most fabulous facility you are going to have the opportunity to see in a long time. And you're going to have a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things. First thing we want you to do, and I love your badges, I love your name tags. Those of you who didn't wear yours, take a look at the others and see what they did and come tomorrow with your own. And if you didn't get one, just make one and you'll be all set. We're going to go around starting here with Marcus, and all I want you to do is tell us your name and where you're from. That's it for right now. And we'll have an opportunity in a little while to get much better acquainted. So Marcus?
Marcus Twyford, Cincinnati Country Day School.
Thank you.
Amanda O'Mara. I'm from outside of Akron, and I teach at the working Cuyahoga Falls City Schools.
Okay.
Beth from Sandusky City Schools.
Crystal, I'm actually Miss Wells Park English student.
Yes, you are, and you're going to be our videographer, aren't you? Very good. Okay, Crystal, thanks for doing that.
Yeah. Joanna McNally, Orange City Schools.
Betsy Lee, also Orange Schools.
Nathan Jenkins, Warren Heights.
Carrie Lyon, Beaver Local Schools.
Sarah Lowe, Beaver Local Schools.
Blaine Bryson, Avon Schools.
Darren Furno, Kansas City Schools.
Oh, yeah, and we'll skip you for now, okay?
Jenny Zacharias, Strong Schools.
Okay.
Jen Bangle, Vermillion Local Schools.
Dolores Whaley, Akron Public Schools.
Chris Tonic, Westerville City Schools.
Beth Meta, Westerville City. Kristen Gomez, Garfield, Pierceville.
Matt Earhart, Ehoe Pearson.
Okay, very good. And you can see that you have come from far and wide to be with us, from Cincinnati to Sandusky, so, and many points in between. We do have student assistants with us today, and we'll have them introduce themselves to you in just a little bit. But now, this is a privilege and an honor for me. We had this brainstorm about doing a maker camp, and we were going to try to get it done all at Western Reserve Public Media, and we would have driven ourselves crazy trying to do that. And suddenly we heard about ThinkBox, and I sent off an email to I wasn't sure who, and got an immediate reply back from Ruth, who is the assistant, who said, gee, you need to fill out a form and then we'll think about having a meeting with you. Then I got another email from her who said, would you be able to come up on Friday? We came up on Friday. We met with Malcolm Cook, who is the executive director at ThinkBox, and Ian Charnas, who is the manager, and had a wonderful meeting with them, and this is what happened as a result of that. And we are so glad, and we have invited Malcolm to be with us today and to speak to you for a little while. He has a meeting at about 11, but he's going to talk to you about his background, a little bit about ThinkBox and its evolution, and a couple of the projects that he's been able to work on because of being here. So, Malcolm, the floor is yours. You're welcome.
Well, I'd like to extend a welcome to you to ThinkBox. So this is the Larry and Sally Zalotnik Sears ThinkBox. Have to get their names right because they are one of our major donors. So what you're sort of sitting in at the moment is just one floor of this 50,000 square foot building, which is ThinkBox, and I'll explain a lot more about that as I show a few slides. But just to give you a bit of background, I'm an associate professor in mechanical and aerospace engineering at the university. I have nearly 16 years experience at Case Western, so I have a lot of sort of historical, archival information about the university, and particularly about the development of ThinkBox, which I've been involved in from the very beginning. And again, I'll explain a bit more about that. My interest is in design and advanced manufacturing. My research interest is in biomedical engineering, and I'll I'll share a couple of projects that I've been involved in with you towards the end, which really reflects some of the amazing resources that we have within ThinkBox. I'd also extend the opportunity for any of you to stop by my office or stop me as you see me walking around, because Ian Charnas, our manager, and I, we've sort of consulted with way over 100 institutions, which includes schools, middle schools, high schools, other universities, on development of makerspaces and the sort of infrastructure around that. So if that is an interest, and I know it is certainly for one gentleman here, then I'm happy for you to pick my brains, and I can point you to a lot of resources around makerspaces and what some of the snafus are that we've found out over the period of time that we've been developing ThinkBox. So stop me at any time with questions. I will point out that we're under construction, so if you hear pneumatic hammers and drills, don't freak out. It's at least 2 floors away. And these ceilings are between 11 and 12 inches thick of reinforced concrete, so the chances of you seeing anything is remote. The rumble is not an earthquake. If we were in California, we'd all be underneath the tables by now. That is just the CSX railway, which is right next door to us on the other side of that wall. So you'll hear rumbling from time to time. You might hear drilling, but this is a living space, and welcome to it. So what I'd like to just start with is a little bit of background to ThinkBox. ThinkBox is round about 6 and a bit years, nearly 7 years old. The idea of ThinkBox occurred round about 2009, somewhere in that time frame. I, at that time, was at the University of Texas in El Paso doing some research, but I was an adjunct here because I'd been here 10 years prior to that. So I was involved in some of the early discussions around the idea of ThinkBox, and the whole idea really was to provide a space initially for students to work on projects. So that was the germ of the idea. Very quickly it became clear that it had a much wider audience and a much wider purpose. And so very early on we decided that it would be open to the community, and not just engineering students, but the whole campus, but extend way outside the campus into our local and sort of national community. So ThinkBox is open to the community, and the whole idea really is around innovation and entrepreneurship. So our makerspace is just basically 1 floor. So if you go to any makerspaces in schools or for profit, then you'll see exactly what we have on our 3rd floor. But this is a 7th floor building. So we have many opportunities to develop the idea of innovation and entrepreneurship much further than just a makerspace. So to change the economic and social culture of our Northeast Ohio region was our main vision, and really to provide an ecosystem around entrepreneurship. And this has been so successful in its early stages that the state of Ohio actually gave us $1 million. So if you think we're a private research university, top tier research, and states don't normally fund private universities, but because of the economic impact that we were having in terms of startup companies, jobs being created, then they gave us $1 million as part of the construction for this building. So ThinkBox is a physical space. You're in it. 50,000 square feet. We moved in October last year. We were in temporary space for 3 years prior to that. But really, it's more than space. It's a cultural change engine. So we are trying to change the culture, not just of the university, but also of the Northeast Ohio region. And we obviously spread much further because, you know, I can share with you some of the universities that we've consulted with, and they range from California to Boston, and so we're having a huge impact, and we also have a huge impact internationally. So we have a number of satellite ThinkBox facilities, Singapore, Malaysia, and we have a lot of discussion going on in China at the moment. So it's all about this ecosystem around commercialization, entrepreneurship, and really to provide a support system and a nurturing system for those people that have an idea. They want to test that idea out to see whether there's a business opportunity, and if there is, provide all the resources around that, and then obviously to support the business as it's created and as it grows. I like to use this as the mantra for ThinkBox. This is my mantra. This is not the official version. You won't find this on our website, but I like it, and I hope we adopt it at some point. But really, ThinkBox is all about freedom. It's the freedom to ideate. So we want to provide the resources to support people thinking about ideas. Once you've got those ideas, then clearly you're going to sort of modify those ideas. You're going to innovate around those ideas to explore the various avenues of what it might be. And then, of course, you're going to create something. Okay? So the freedom to ideate, innovate, and create. And you can apply that mantra at any stage in the process. So regardless of where you are in that sort of ideation, innovation, creation stage, you can still apply this. And I think that's a really powerful sort of mantra to have in your back pocket. So we'll see how it goes. Many of us probably have heard of Carl Sagan, probably read a lot of his publications, but I think this again speaks to ThinkBox very well. So Carl Sagan said, "Imagination will often carry us to worlds that never were, but without it, we go nowhere." So think of your schools, think of your students. If they're not using their imagination, if they're not creative, if they're not innovating, then the whole thing is stagnant. They're going nowhere. And if that's what we're producing, then we should be ashamed of ourselves. And this is certainly true here. So we foster, we nurture imagination, creativity, innovation. And that is so, so powerful. This building is called the Ritchie Mixon Building. J.B. Ritchie and Mal Mixon are the founders of Invacare, which you've probably heard of, a huge medical device, medical equipment company. J.B. Ritchie unfortunately passed away last November. So J.B. and Mal Mixon were donors for this building, which is why it has their name. But J.B. came out with this phrase, which again I think is very, very powerful. So Carl Sagan is on about imagination. J.B. is on about trying things. You can't be afraid to try new things and to try using new technologies, because they just might hit and you're going to have a widely successful product. So unless you grasp those opportunities, Unless you sort of work on them, develop them, then again, you're not going anywhere. You'll have missed that opportunity. JB is renowned for producing or designing the first full-body CT scan, amongst other things. So we opened October the 1st in this building. The steps that you see there are what you're sitting on. So they're famous steps. That's where the ribbon was cut. So October the 1st, students started to use it towards the end of October, beginning of November. Like you, our semester finishes the beginning of December. So not much student activity in that sort of month and a bit, maybe. So we've just finished our first full academic semester. This is the banner on our website. So if you go to thinkbox.case.edu, this is what you'll see. And this is not just sort of eye candy. This actually has a huge meaning to us. And I hope it has a huge meaning to everyone that goes to our website. If you go from left to right, then it's a natural progression, a natural process of having an idea, developing that idea, and as you get towards the right-hand end of the corkboard, you're thinking about a startup company, marketing a product, selling a product, and creating value. Not just value for yourselves, but value for the community. And what I'd say, I can't use my pointer on this screen because it just bounces off. So I'm just going to point to the screen. I hate doing this, but if you drew a line down here, that's where most maker spaces finish. So from the left-hand end to the right-hand edge of prototype, that's basically a maker space. But really, if that's the end point, then again, we're doing our users a disservice because we've given them the tools and the opportunity to develop something, and then we're saying, well, you're on your own. What we need to do is we need to provide this latter stage. And I would suggest that in a school environment, you're in a superb position to do that, to really think about the business entrepreneurship element of ideation and making. And so ThinkBox is this whole spectrum of ideation right through to startup creating value. And that's where ThinkBox is unique in most situations. We've all heard of Silicon Valley. Some of us have been there, I hope. It's an interesting place to go. If you want to see Google and Facebook and whatever. But Silicon Valley is not like a farm. And what I'd like to draw a comparison is the difference between a farm and an alternative. So if we think about a farm, and those of us that live close by, and those of us that travel either from Sandusky or Cincinnati, we go through lots and lots of farmland. So what you'll find are these farms that are producing corn, producing milk, producing meat, or whatever. That farm is dedicated to that process. If there's any disturbance in that process, then that disturbance is eradicated immediately. So if you've got a cornfield and you go out and you see pests or you see weeds, you spray it. If you go to your apple orchard and you see mites and bugs, you spray it. What you want to do is you want to sort of really focus on what that farm is to produce. And it does it very well. I mean, don't get me wrong. So you see a disturbance, you get rid of it. what I'd like you to think about, and I think, again, think about your own situation in your own classrooms, your own schools, and think about what you're actually producing. What's the end product? This is a rainforest. So if you contrast a farm to a rainforest, you will see a huge difference. So now, if there's a disturbance in the rainforest, if there's chaos in the rainforest, it's just allowed to evolve. It's not tended. We don't try and identify the weeds. It's full of weeds. It's full of different fauna and flora. And in fact, I would guarantee that if you go to Google and you Google discoveries in rainforests, probably there were discoveries last week or the week before. You still discover things in rainforests. Most of our medicines originate from discoveries in rainforests. So the thing about a rainforest is then that this disturbance might produce something that becomes the most valuable thing in that environment. Whereas if we were following a farm model, we would have destroyed it and we would never have known what that value was, what that might have sort of grown into. And I'd like to suggest that ThinkBox is our rainforest. If there are disturbances, if people are thinking strange, weird things, we don't say, hey, you can't do that. That's not going to take you anywhere. Think of Carl Sagan with the imagination. Think of J.B. Ritchie with trying new things. You know, for us, disturbance, chaos, new things, that's our food. That's what we want to generate. If you're interested in sort of following this up, there's a book called The Rainforest by Huang and Horowitz. And basically, the rainforest is the Silicon Valley model. So don't control specific processes. Set the environment and allow it to develop. And that's what ThinkBox is all about. And that's what makerspaces ought to be about. You know, just allow it to evolve. So creativity is thinking up new things, but innovation is creating new things that someone will buy. So when we're talking about innovation, it's quite different to invention. We can invent the craziest things that nobody will ever buy or be interested in. Innovation is creating things that people see value in and will buy. And that's what makerspaces and ThinkBox in particular is all about. If you think about the innovation loop, then ideas, infrastructure, talent are three elements that I would suggest is within this innovation loop. So you and your schools have absolutely no problem with talent. Your students, our students, are exceedingly talented, always got great ideas. We need to be able to provide the infrastructure to allow those ideas to develop. So in terms of infrastructure, then we're talking about place. Obviously, you need a physical space. You need an environment, and that environment is more than space. And you need a mindset, which clearly is not space, other than space between your ears. So you have to develop that mindset where students are not scared to try new things. In terms of our ecosystem, then on the left-hand side are some of the elements of ThinkBox. We obviously have the physical space, LaunchNet, the IP Venture Clinic. These names won't necessarily mean anything to you, but basically, if you're developing an idea and you want to actually take it to market, then you've got to think about protecting the intellectual property. You've got to think about how do you set up a company? How do you get funding? And really, everything underneath Sears ThinkBox label is all about that infrastructure. We link very closely to the Northeast Ohio entrepreneurship ecosystem, Jumpstart, Launch House, and so on. These are accelerators and incubators. So 7 floors, 50,000 square feet. I'll just undo all the floors. 7 floors. Every floor has a focus. So right from the community floor right through to the incubator is a natural progression. So there's a natural progression through the building as you come up with an idea, develop the idea, prototype it, and so on. So every floor has those foci. Currently, we're under construction. By the end of this summer, beginning of the fall, we will have finished floors 2 through to 5. What we're developing, and I have a meeting at 3 o'clock today, is to start going over the layouts for floor 6. So perhaps by the spring, end of spring next year, we'll actually have the 6th and the 7th floor finished. That will just leave the 1st floor. The 1st floor is giving us a headache. For many reasons. Some I would share, some I would not. The floor that you're going to use mostly is the 3rd floor, and that's where all our digital prototyping stuff, I can just click this because you'll see it. So we're one of the largest university innovation entrepreneurship centers. Open access, so we're freely open, so anybody can walk through our door on the 3rd floor, sign in and talk to our superb student workers, which we've got 4 here, and they will help. Local companies come and use the space. American Greetings, we're doing a big brainstorming session about 2 weeks ago. So I came into my office at about 8 o'clock and they're already got all the whiteboards down there, and so this is freely available to anyone. Interdisciplinary, collaborative, and what I would say about interdisciplinary is the fact that because we're open to the community, then we get these serendipitous collisions. Erica is a graduate of the CIA. Did you graduate yet?
No.
Sorry. It just seems like you've been around a long time. So Erica is a student from the Cleveland Institute of Art. So 15% of our users come from the Institute of Art. We employ Institute of Art students as our students, some of our student workers, and those accidental collisions are exceedingly valuable. And we've seen it time and time again. And some of them sort of turn out into be amazing sort of startup companies. So collaboration, interdisciplinary is really important. We're just crunching the data from the last academic year, so I can't share that with you at the moment. It's still being worked on. But this was our previous year's data. So that corresponds to around between 3,500 and 4,000 users a month through our doors, and this was in temporary space. We know now that we have way over 5,000 visits in this space every month. But the take-home message from this pie chart really is that only 40% are engineering students. So when people first come in, they think, oh yeah, it's engineering. It's all about anything making must be engineering, but that's not true. 60% of our users are not engineers, which is really important. Our community users are K through 12, some companies, other university students. So we're very proud of the cross-section of users. This is just a quick sort of snapshot of this space. We have over 5,000 visits a month now. Total number of visits since we opened in 2012 in our temporary space is over 140,000. We give huge amounts of tours. All our prospective students and families are toured ThinkBox. And the last statistic is really important to our administration because 39% of students who knew about ThinkBox said that it was ThinkBox that tipped the scale for them to accept the offer that Case Western gave them to actually come here. And that's huge. We provide support for students. We have a student project fund, and this year it's just over $80,000. So students can apply to us with their project ideas and a budget, and we $1,000 as a project fund for them. If you go to our website, all our projects are listed, and our students go and apply to those. I'm going to very quickly go through these because I'm mindful of the time. But you can go to our website, go to the projects page, and there are, I don't know, 6 or 8 pages of projects. A number of them are startup companies, and they've all been developed with the support of ThinkBox. Every key, this is a wristband or a dongle type thing that will unlock anything that holds passwords, developed in here. We have a number of medical devices. So this is a medical device that will do the standard 8 blood panel test just with a drop of blood. So when you go for your physical and the doctor says, oh, we need to do a blood test, and you go and you have about 3 vials of blood pulled out of your arm, and then they tell you all about what you've got and all that stuff. This can do it just with a drop. So drop of blood, pop it into the machine, and you get the 8 result. This already is in use in most of the sports conferences. This is for training athletes to breathe more efficiently, to get more oxygen into their lungs. Awesome device. I don't know whether you know, but I didn't. In Africa, there are huge communities, villages that have no power. I knew that. What I didn't know was that they have cell phone coverage. So they have cell phone coverage, but no grid, no power. So how often do you charge your phone? You probably just plug it in overnight, and imagine not having power. What do you do? These people walk for days to a village that has solar, usually solar collectors, to charge their phone. And then they have to wait for it to be charged. And this is a foot treadle, which basically charges cell phones. They've just developed a whole series of LED systems so that they now have light, so they don't have to burn paraffin in lamps. Just to give you, again, a bit of broadness, this is a startup company that designs clothing and embeds electronics in it. So as you walk around, it changes color and lights and stuff like that. Another medical device, you can't quite see it, but on the back of this iPhone is an adapter that was designed here so that they can take photographs of patients' eyes. So these are some of our startup students, startup groups. They've raised over $3.5 million in follow-on funding. In January, Consumer Electronics Show, if anybody wants to go and see plenty of eye candy and have a bit of gambling at the same time, then January in Las Vegas. So this is a huge deal. January was the third time that we'd been there. And we're by far the greatest university in bringing students to that show. I talked about that. What I will do is just to finish is I'll give you my experience of ThinkBox, because you know, I'm a tinkerer, I'm a maker, I'm a researcher, so I'm really interested in what this offers. So if you go for an MRI or a CT, then your surgeon, your radiologist, will be able to see 3D images of your body or whatever's being scanned. So basically, it's just taking slices and then putting them together, which is fairly standard. So, but once you get these scans and you can create the 3D model, then I've got 3D printers upstairs that I can actually print it. So you're not just looking at it on a screen, on a 2D screen, and flicking it around. So if the surgeon is really interested to communicate with you to say, this is what's wrong, this is what we're going to do, then maybe it's a good idea to actually see it. Okay? So I'll pass this around. This is a 12-year-old female, had a serious car accident as a very young child, crushed her foot, and now the surgeons are looking at reconstructing her foot, basically. So I got the CT data, I extracted the bone, I 3D printed it, and gave it to the surgeons. So the orthopedic surgeons have models that they can then plan their surgical techniques and decide on whatever fixation they need. So if you look at this, this is her big toe. So she was trapped under the car and it squashed her foot. This is a bit fragile, but I'll pass it around. And I've had to put a link here so that it keeps the bone in position. This is another 12-year-old girl that was born with a deformed hand. So your hand doesn't, your orientation of your wrist isn't like that, but her wrist is permanently like that. And again, the surgeons have decided that it's time to fix it. So that again, the surgeons got copies of this model so that they can plan the surgery. This is a heart, so I'll pass this around. This last one is an interesting one. I'm working with a dental surgeon over in the dental school. The expertise of this particular dental surgeon is to fix cleft palates in newborn babies. So the earlier it can be done, apparently the better outcome. So we're investigating how we can 3D scan a patient with a cleft palate, 3D print it in order to create the devices and prosthetics that the patient's going to need. We're at very early stages, but this was the dental. We scanned the dental surgeon, and so this is very early stage, but pretty exciting. So that's me done that. So happy to answer any questions. What I hope is that you take full advantage of ThinkBox, use it as your own. You're going to have so much fun, away from school anyway.
Just real quick, 2 questions. Nevin, you want to go first?
Oh.
Go ahead.
My question is, you know how you put the line down and you said, you know, before you do the maker here and then over here is where the business side comes into it. We were asked to kind of like think of something to actually create.
Yeah.
And so part of my challenge is always I'm trying to do you use space also just to come in and be like, you're not about creating or do something with a 3D printer, but something like community development or even organizational development, we just need a space to come in and start designing?
Sure,
Okay.
sure. The last office in this block is an office that we not rent out, hire out, because we actually pay them to be there. Design for America. If you're interested in checking that out, if you go to Northwestern University's website, and you can go to our website, but Northwestern is where it originated. Design for America. So these are students that basically get involved in community challenges, and it's all extracurricular. And we have a fantastic chapter here. And so in terms of those sorts of projects, sometimes they make things, but often it's a case of process. So one of their early projects was to make the library in Glenville a lot more welcoming, to increase the usage of the library. And this was not about, oh, you need these magazines to bring people in. It was more about environment and attitude. So yes, that certainly goes on. Another question?
I happen to be a school librarian
Yeah.
in high school, and I'm very passionate about the makerspace
Sure.
concept, and I think we have this debate in our school district about like purposeful design and having everything be project-based, and it has to have a purpose versus an open concept to allow
Right.
students to be able to ideate and innovate and create,
Right.
not necessarily always have it be purposeful.
Sure.
And so just as somebody at the university level, and you're saying, high schoolers, K-12 is in a perfect place to help with some of this, how do you actually see, high schools helping evolve into this at the university level?
Right. I mean, I think what you're describing is this conflict between a farm and a rainforest.
Yeah.
Aren't you? I've never taught in schools. I've always taught in universities. So I can't really appreciate the rigor and constraints that Common Core curriculum and testing has. Let me just get rid of this. Telling me that I need to be somewhere soon. Well, that's my life. So I appreciate the problem that you're in. I think having maker spaces in libraries is a plus. I think you've already lowered a lot of barriers because libraries are seen as general purpose and everybody uses them. So it's not a department or a particular part of the school that owns it. So I think that's a benefit. What I see, and what I see even here on university campuses, is a lot of the creativity and innovation is done extracurricular. So these are projects that generally are outside of the normal curriculum. So if students are given projects within their course, there is less flexibility probably, not all the time, but probably, in where the boundaries are. If a student comes into our space with their own idea, there are no boundaries. So I think you have to sort of walk that line between having your students in outside of the normal class periods, and then trying to educate the faculty at the school to release some of those constraints. And that's scary for a lot of people. To not have boundaries makes people feel very, very uncomfortable because they've lost control. And it's a mindset thing. But the more that schools can provide those resources, the better it is for us. because they're coming to us already with that mindset that they're not scared to try things, and they're already familiar with some of the equipment. I mean, ours might be bigger and more expensive, but a 3D printer is a 3D printer is a 3D printer. Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Malcolm, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Oh, you're
That was a wonderful